this way?
No, I'm just gonna look.
I think I'm gonna paint that direction.
Yeah, you're just anticipating the sun.
Maybe lower than that. All right, so back out at Malibu Creek State Park with Araya here again. We're gonna give it another go. It's pretty calm right now, but if you saw the last video, we had some rough times there with the wind. So anyway, we're gonna paint a different view this time. All right, so here is the scene we're working with. And I'm thinking of doing a distant view like this, but Araya, you're gonna do a more zoomed in view, is that right?
Yeah, almost exactly like your composition here, but with no sky, so you can just see the trees and some of the hills in the background.
Yeah, you're gonna like focus like right in this area here.
Yeah.
So Araya squeezed out two different types of white. So you got titanium white here?
Yep.
And what is this one?
Titanium zinc white.
Okay, so a titanium zinc mixture. Yeah, you can see this one looks warmer.
It looks warmer and it looks less stiff.
Yeah. All right, so I'm working on a 24 by 30 inch canvas today. One of the challenges that I'm dealing with here is that the canvas is backlit a bit, so you can see the crossbar there. It doesn't really distract me, but hopefully it will not be too distracting for you guys. So there's two peaks out here. I think I want the bigger one to peak on the third from the left. And I'm just gonna sketch out these shapes here just quickly to see how I feel about the arrangement. I might actually push this up even a little higher, closer to the top, something like that. And then I'm downplaying this one. And one thing I don't want is, I do not want a peak right in the center. All right, this kind of comes down at more of an angle like that. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, and then the river kind of winds up like this. And swings over here. And then comes out down here. The river kind of narrows in the distance. Then there's some sand in this area here. All right, step back. I feel like I want this to come up more. To be more dramatic. Like that. All right, Araya's got his sketch down. Are you sketching in alizarin, or is that?
You know, it's alizarin, but I had some leftover green on that brush, so it kind of dulled it out. It's kind of just like a dull red now.
You got your river, and then that separation line right there.
Yeah, this between and this is the background. Again, I'm kind of having second thoughts about not putting the sky in there, but
I've seen you have success with that approach before.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, now the big shapes are in place. I'm getting a little more specific with the shapes. And I do like that this mountain here, this mountaintop is higher than the other. There are some trees in the mid-ground here that I want to include that kind of break up this line between the mountains and the flat area. And just add a variety of those trees kind of in here. And over here, there's kind of a dark pattern of trees that extends up into the mountains. Like this, kind of dark, right like that. All right, so here's the sketch. I do have concerns about the shape of the river here. It's just this curve bothers me, but the light is changing quickly, so I'm going to start putting some paint on here. Araya's already laying in those background colors. I love those blue greens, kind of grayed down nicely.
Trying to keep it lighter, like we talked about, and cooler.
Yeah, I think that's going to sit back nicely when you put those warmer tones in the foreground. Okay, for the sky, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue, titanium white, and some phthalo blue. And I'm going to put the sky in first. I'm going to wait on putting the shadows onto the mountains because I remember from last time that as the morning progresses, there's some really nice shadows that develop on the mountains. Right now, it's pretty much full light with just a few areas of shadow. So, put the sky in first. And I'm thinning with liquid. The liquid really does help apply the paint quickly. So I do use liquid during the scrub in. But then after the scrub in, I go to paint straight out of the tube as far as thickness goes. Squinting at the scene to eliminate detail. And there's some trees on this hill here. And then over here as well. And what I'm trying to do is not think of these as trees, but think of them as abstract shapes. And then I want to have an interesting arrangement of abstract shapes. So on this hill here, there are some bushes that are kind of isolated. And you can see if they're all isolated like that, it does not look particularly good. So if I connect them and look for, you know, like I said, a connecting pattern, see, then that's a little bit too straight of a line there. Maybe like that. That's a little bit more interesting. And I think the values are a little bit dark. That's all right. I can lighten them up once I've gotten the whole canvas covered. Then I can judge the values and the colors more accurately. All right, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue, a bit of titanium white, and a little bit of burnt sienna for the river, for the water of the river here. And I've just kind of averaged out a color and value. When we first got here, this river was really, it was like a dark, dark blue. And it's lightening up a bit, but I do want to try to capture that dark saturated blue for the river. And I'm getting some dappled light here on my canvas, which is okay. Doesn't bother me if it doesn't bother you. All right, there's quite a variety of greens along the river here, lighter value greens, but I'm just going to start with one green, one value, just to establish the shapes, and then if I want to, I can come in and look for variety within those shapes. But I'm trying to be good about focusing on shapes and composition. And so just trying to simplify the scene as much as possible. All right, I've added a little bit of titanium white to cool off the mix and lighten it up a bit. And this side of the river appears to be a little bit cooler in temperature, the greens do. All right, for the lighter portion of the distant hills, I'm going with sort of a blue-green color here, just mixed into existing paint that I already had on my palette. And even though there's quite a bit of light and warmth on these hills, for now I want to keep them cooler than the greens in the foreground in order to get some separation. Got a dull purplish color here for the distant mountains, and there are some nice shadow shapes that are starting to develop on these hills or mountains here. This mountain here actually has some greenery going up onto it. It's just bits of exposed rock and a little bit right here too. All right, just adjusting the shape of these distant hills here. It's like a hill that runs up onto the front of this mountain. And there is the scrub in. All right, Araya put his river in there. Yeah, you're going also with a dark saturated blue, and looks like you got some purples in there as well.
Yeah, I can't decide. I keep seeing purples in the river, and then I keep seeing blue. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get some greenish blues and some purples in there.
All right, at this point, I am proceeding with caution. I've got a number 6 natural bristle flat here that I've switched over to. I was using a number 8 for the scrub in, and I'm gonna try to walk back frequently to make sure I'm not losing track of the big shapes. Starting with a dark green mixture here to establish this line right here. And I've got quite a bit of blue in this mixture. Even though these are greens out here, I want to make sure that I push these greens into the distance. So I'm mixing in quite a bit of blue into the green. Just applying thicker paint, and as I've mentioned before, trying not to break up the overall design. And so far this number 6 is working. This seems to be a good size for what I'm trying to do here. All right, I'm going to experiment putting a few rocks into the water here to break up the shoreline a bit. The base of the rock is kind of dark, so I'm going to put the dark of the bottom of the rocks there. And then maybe some dark on this side of the rock, something like that. Also just looking for little bits of distracting bits of light. All right, so here's what I finished up with. I was able to keep some of the areas transparent. This is the original scrub in right here. It's just got some thicker portions on the surface, but I tried to keep a lot of these transparent areas intact and not paint over them. All right, and here's what Araya finished with. Yeah, that looks great. Actually, I love how you simplified that background there with those blue greens in the distance. And I like the abstract shape of the river. Very cool.
Thank you.
What were some of the biggest challenges for you in this painting?
I always have problems, like we were talking about earlier, getting, I can paint stuff really far away or generally close, but if I have things in the midground, they look too busy and the colors never look right to me. And I think we talked that through a little bit today.
Yeah.
I needed to keep the colors cool in the background and the shapes a little bit more simple and less busy.
Yeah, I tried to do that too. Like less contrast in the background. The greens can be warmer in the foreground, and then in the background, almost like blue green. Like you had those really nice minty blue greens that were sitting back. I mean, that
when I was mixing those, I just thought that's too light. There's no way that's going to work. You know, you really have to. Especially if you're mixing on a mid-tone palette, right? You really have to make sure the color is light, you know?
Exactly. The thing that was surprising to me was like my initial idea with those distant mountains was to desaturate them and lighten the value a bit, but it wasn't working. So I felt like I kept adding more warmth to them, but I think the reason it worked is because they were a red-orange color, and so there was enough separation from the foreground that it worked. The key thing to remember is sometimes you can have a plan, and if it's not working, switch it up and just like it's like trial and error until it works. And I think that's why it's so important to constantly be walking back. And I noticed you're spending just as much time as I am back there. You're like, were you always that way where you'd stand back? Because it seems like in the time we've been painting, now you stand back like 20 feet.
I do.
I mean, almost all the time.
Yeah, I didn't do it when I first started painting, and then I didn't want to pick up really bad habits, so I tried to pay attention to what artists that I admire were doing, and I noticed that about some artists that I really, really liked at the time, so I made sure just to do that.
I was applying some color to those mountains, and I thought it might be too saturated and too warm, and then when I got back it's like, it's not warm at all. Like, or it was, but I had a lot more room. I could have pushed it way more.
Yeah, you showed me that color on your palette when you were mixing it.
Yeah.
And it looked really bright on
Right.
your palette, but on the painting it looked appropriate.
Yeah. It was quite an experience, these last 2 trips here.
It was, yeah, it was.
But I can't wait to come back.
And me too, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Redemption from the other day when my easel fell.
I know, that was brutal.
So.
We've had our run-ins with the spring wind, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. I'll also put a link down below to Araya's Instagram, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. See you guys in the next video. Some little bits of purple underneath under these plants. Kind of balance it out.
Yes.
On the other side.
Yes, I like to do that too sometimes.